My dad said, "This year's just too crowded. Maybe you and your kids sit it out." I said, "No problem." Then my son saw a video on Instagram. My cousin's friends, her boss, even a toddler from next door, all at my parents' house. I took a photo of the gifts we wrapped and texted, dropping these off at Goodwill. 40 minutes later, my dad was at my door, breathless. I, 34M, stared at the screen for a solid minute before the reality of it settled in. My son had wandered into the living room with his phone in hand, asking if Grandpa had gotten a new dog. I told him I had no idea what he was talking about. He showed me the Instagram story. There it was. My parents' living room, packed wall to wall with people. My cousin's friends. Her boss, apparently. Some toddler I vaguely recognized from 3 houses down. Even neighbors I'd seen maybe twice in my life. Everyone was holding champagne flutes. There was a massive spread on the dining table. My mom was laughing in the background, wearing the sweater I'd bought her 2 years ago. 3 days earlier, my dad had called. He said this year's gathering was just too crowded, and maybe my wife, our 2 kids, and I should sit it out. He made it sound reasonable. He said they were trying to keep things intimate, small, manageable. I didn't argue. I told him no problem. My wife asked if I was sure, and I said it was fine. We'd have our own quiet holiday. The kids were disappointed, but they got over it quickly enough. Now I was looking at proof that intimate meant everyone except us. I asked my son to send me the story. He did. I screenshotted it. Then I opened the family group chat and scrolled back through the last 2 weeks. My mom had sent reminders about bringing side dishes. My cousin had joked about needing extra folding chairs. My brother had asked what time to arrive. I hadn't been tagged in a single message. I scrolled further. They'd been planning this for over a month. The realization came in waves. First confusion, then anger, then something colder. My wife walked in and asked what was wrong. I showed her the phone. She went quiet. Then she asked what I was going to do. I told her I wasn't sure yet. She said we should just let it go. Move on. I nodded, but I already knew I wasn't going to do that. I looked at the pile of gifts we'd wrapped. We'd spent hours on them. My daughter had hand-drawn cards for everyone. My son had picked out a specific cologne for my dad because he'd mentioned liking it once 6 months ago. My wife had baked cookies and packaged them in custom tins. I'd bought my mom a first edition of a book she'd been searching for. We'd done all of this while knowing we weren't invited. We'd planned to drop them off before the gathering, leave them on the porch, keep things civil. I walked over to the gifts and stacked them in my arms. My wife asked what I was doing. I told her I was taking a photo. She watched as I arranged them neatly on the coffee table, making sure every tag was visible. I snapped the picture. Then I opened the family group chat and typed out a message. I wrote that we appreciated being thought of this year, and since we wouldn't be attending, we were dropping these off at Goodwill so someone else could enjoy them. I attached the photo. Then I hit send. I put my phone face down on the counter and told my wife I was going to take a shower. She said nothing. I could feel her watching me as I left the room. 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing. I ignored it. When I got out, there were 37 missed calls. 12 from my dad, 8 from my mom, the rest from my brother and cousin. The group chat had exploded. My mom was asking what I meant. My brother said I was overreacting. My cousin sent 3 paragraphs about how I was being dramatic. I read every message and didn't respond to any of them. Then my dad called again. I let it ring out. He called back immediately. I answered. He asked what I was doing. I told him exactly what I'd said in the text. He said I was being ridiculous and that I needed to calm down. I asked him why I wasn't invited. He stumbled over his words. He said it wasn't like that. He said they just wanted to keep it small this year. I asked him if the toddler from down the street was immediate family. He went quiet. Then he said I was twisting things. I told him I wasn't twisting anything. I said I saw the Instagram story. I said I saw exactly how small and intimate it was. He said my cousin had posted that without thinking. I asked him if that made it less true. He didn't answer. Then he said I was being unfair and that I needed to stop being so sensitive. I told him I wasn't being sensitive. I said I was being excluded, and he knew it. He said that wasn't what happened. I asked him what did happen then. He said it was complicated. I said it seemed pretty simple to me. He told me not to take the gifts to Goodwill. I asked him why not. He said because it was spiteful. I told him it wasn't spite. I said if we weren't part of the family gathering, then the gifts weren't relevant anymore. Someone else could use them. He said I was trying to hurt them. I asked him if he thought about hurting me when he made his decision. He said that was different. I asked how. He didn't have an answer. Then he said he was coming over. I told him not to bother. He said he was already on his way. I hung up. My wife asked if I was okay. I told her I was fine. She said I didn't look fine. I said I was handling it. She said she believed me, but that she was worried. I told her there was nothing to worry about. The kids came downstairs and asked what was happening. I said nothing important. My son asked if we were still giving away the presents. I told him we'd see. 40 minutes later, there was pounding on the door. I opened it. My dad was standing there, breathless. His face was red. He looked like he'd sprinted from the car. He asked if I was serious about Goodwill. I said I was. He said I couldn't do that. I asked him why not. He said because those gifts were for the family. I told him I wasn't part of this year's family apparently. He said that wasn't true. I asked him to explain the Instagram story then. He said my cousin shouldn't have posted it. I said that wasn't an explanation. He said things got out of hand. I asked what that meant. He said my mom invited a few extra people and it snowballed. I asked why I wasn't one of those people. He said it wasn't personal. I laughed. I asked him how excluding your son wasn't personal. He said I was making a scene. I told him I wasn't making anything. I said he'd made his choice, and now I was making mine. He said I was being childish. I asked him if he'd feel differently if I'd done this to him. He said that was different. I asked how. Again, no answer. He asked to come inside. I stepped back and let him in. He looked at the pile of gifts still sitting on the coffee table. He asked if I'd really been about to donate them. I told him I still might. He said I was being cruel. I said I learned from the best. My mom called his phone. He answered. She asked if he'd talked sense into me. He said he was working on it. She said I needed to stop being dramatic. I could hear her voice through the speaker. He asked her to hold on. Then he asked me what it would take to fix this. I told him I didn't know if it could be fixed. He said everything could be fixed. I asked him if he genuinely believed that. He said he had to. I sat down on the couch. He sat across from me. He said he understood I was upset. I told him upset didn't cover it. He said he'd made a mistake. I asked if he was apologizing. He said he was trying to. I told him trying wasn't the same as doing. He said fine, he was sorry. I asked what he was sorry for. He said for not including me. I asked why he didn't include me. He said my mom thought it would be easier this year without the extra people. I asked if I was extra people now. He didn't respond. I told him he had a choice. He could go back to his party and pretend this conversation never happened, or he could stay and actually deal with what he'd done. He asked what dealing with it looked like. I said it looked like honesty. He said he was being honest. I said he wasn't even close. Then he admitted my mom had specifically asked him to keep the gathering smaller this year, and that she'd mentioned my wife and I had been difficult lately. I asked what difficult meant. He said we'd been distant. I laughed again. I said we'd been distant because they'd been pulling away for months. He said that wasn't true. I rattled off 6 examples from the past 4 months. Times they'd canceled plans with us, but not with my brother. Events they'd invited him to, but not me. He said he hadn't noticed. I told him that was the problem. He said my mom had been stressed. I asked if that justified lying to me. He said nobody lied. I reminded him about the too crowded excuse. He said that wasn't technically a lie. I told him it was worse than a lie. It was an insult to my intelligence. My wife came into the room. She asked if everything was okay. My dad said it was fine. I said it wasn't. She asked if she should leave. I told her to stay. My dad looked uncomfortable. I asked him why her being there bothered him. He said it didn't. I said his face said otherwise. He said he just wanted to talk to me alone. I told him that wasn't happening. Whatever he had to say, he could say in front of her. He asked me what I wanted. I told him I wanted him to go back to his party, tell everyone what he'd done, and explain why I wasn't there. He said that would ruin the evening. I said good. He said I was being vindictive. I said I was being honest. He said there was a difference. I told him not in this case. He stood up. He said if I wasn't going to be reasonable, there was no point in continuing the conversation. I told him to leave then. He said he would. Then he stopped at the door and asked if I was really going to throw away our relationship over one holiday. I told him I wasn't throwing anything away. I said he already had. He said that wasn't fair. I said life wasn't fair. He walked out. Update 1. 2 hours later, my brother showed up. He didn't knock. He just walked in like he still lived here. He asked what I'd done. I asked what he meant. He said mom was crying and dad was barely speaking. I told him that wasn't my problem. He said I'd ruined the evening. I asked if he'd seen the Instagram story. He said he had. I asked if he knew I wasn't invited. He said he assumed I was busy. I told him he assumed wrong. He said I was overreacting. I asked him how he'd feel if the roles were reversed. He said they wouldn't be. I asked why not. He said because he wouldn't make a big deal out of nothing. I told him it wasn't nothing. He said it was one holiday. I said it was bigger than that. He said I was being dramatic. I told him to leave. He didn't leave. He said I needed to apologize. I asked him what I should apologize for. He said for upsetting everyone. I said everyone had upset me first. He said that was different. I asked how. He said I was the one causing problems now. I told him the problems started weeks ago when they planned a party and specifically excluded me. He said maybe there was a reason for that. I asked him to elaborate. He said maybe I hadn't been as present lately. I asked what that meant. He said I'd been distant and maybe they'd noticed. I told him I'd been distant because they'd been freezing me out. He said I was imagining things. I told him to check the group chat. I told him to count how many times I'd been tagged versus how many times he had been. He said he wasn't going to do that. I said that was because he already knew the answer. He asked what I wanted. I said I wanted them to admit what they'd done. He said they weren't going to do that. I asked why not. He said because it would make things awkward. I laughed. I said things were already awkward. He said I was making them worse. I told him I was making them honest. He left after that. My wife said she was proud of me. I asked why. She said because I wasn't backing down. I told her I didn't know how to back down from this. She said good. Update 2. 3 days went by without contact. Then my mom texted. She said we needed to talk. I didn't respond. She called. I didn't answer. She showed up at my house the next morning. I was getting ready for work. She said she wasn't leaving until I listened. I told her to make it quick. She said I'd embarrassed her. I asked how. She said by threatening to donate the gifts. I told her I'd followed through. She asked what I meant. I said I'd taken them to Goodwill that morning. She went pale. She asked if I was serious. I said completely. She said I was being hateful. I said I was being practical. She asked why I was doing this. I told her she knew why. She said she didn't. I asked if she really believed that. She said I was her son and she loved me. I told her love wasn't the same as respect. She asked what I meant. I said she'd chosen a party full of strangers over her own son. She said they weren't strangers. I said they were to me. She said I'd always been sensitive. I told her sensitivity wasn't the issue. Exclusion was. She said I was reading too much into things. I asked her if she'd told Dad to uninvite me. She hesitated. That was all the answer I needed. She said it wasn't like that. I asked what it was like then. She said she'd just wanted a calm holiday without any tension. I asked what tension. She said I'd been difficult lately. I asked for examples. She couldn't give any. I told her that was because there weren't any. She said I was twisting her words. I said I was repeating them. She asked what she needed to do to fix this. I told her she needed to admit what she'd done and why. She said she'd already explained. I said explaining wasn't the same as admitting. She asked what I wanted her to say. I told her I wanted her to say she'd deliberately excluded me because it was easier than dealing with whatever imaginary problem she thought existed. She said that was harsh. I said it was true. She said I was putting words in her mouth. I said I was reading between the lines. She started crying. I didn't comfort her. She said I was being cold. I said I learned it from her. She left after that. My wife asked if I felt better. I said I didn't feel anything. She said that worried her. I told her not to worry. I said I was fine. She said I kept saying that. I told her it was true. Update 3. A week later, my cousin texted. She apologized for the Instagram story. She said she hadn't meant to cause problems. I told her the story wasn't the problem. The exclusion was. She said she didn't know I wasn't invited. I asked how that was possible when she'd been part of the planning. She said she thought I'd declined. I told her nobody had asked me to decline. She said she was sorry. I told her sorry didn't fix anything. She said she didn't know what else to say. I told her there wasn't anything else to say. She asked if I was going to forgive them. I said I didn't know. She said family was important. I said respect was more important. My dad texted a few days after that. He said he wanted to meet for coffee. I agreed. We met at a place halfway between our houses. He looked tired. He said Mom wasn't sleeping. I said that wasn't my problem. He said it was affecting everyone. I said good. He asked what it would take for me to move past this. I told him I wasn't sure I could. He said that wasn't acceptable. I asked since when did he get to decide what was acceptable for me. He said he was my father. I said that used to mean something. He said he'd made a mistake. I told him it was more than a mistake. It was a choice. He said everyone makes bad choices. I said not everyone excludes their family. He said I was being unforgiving. I said I was being realistic. He asked if I'd ever consider coming to another family event. I said maybe. He asked what maybe meant. I said it meant I'd think about it if they could prove things had changed. He asked how they could prove that. I told him that was their problem to figure out. We finished our coffee in silence. When we stood to leave, he asked if I hated him. I told him I didn't hate him. I said I was just disappointed. He said that was worse. I agreed. Months have passed now. My kids ask about their grandparents sometimes. I tell them they're busy. My son doesn't believe me. He's old enough to understand something's wrong. My daughter still draws pictures for them. I keep them in a drawer. My brother called last week. He said Mom's birthday was coming up and asked if I'd be there. I said no. He said I was being stubborn. I said I was being consistent. He hung up without saying goodbye. I don't know if I'll ever go back. Part of me wants to. Part of me knows that what broke can't be fully repaired. My wife says time will help. I tell her maybe, but I don't believe it. Some things, once broken, stay broken. And maybe that's okay. If you like this story, please like this video and subscribe us for more such real life-based stories. Thanks in advance.